So in this video, we're going to talk about pathos, logos, and kairos. Pathos is the Greek word for emotion. It's the root of words like sympathy, empathy, and pathetic. Basically, when we talk about pathos in writing, we talk about using emotion in writing to control how the reader feels, or using writing style to control how the reader feels, and using how the reader feels to inform their reaction to an argument. And how emotions can make them more willing to accept your argument. If you think of things like Save the Whales, you show, a baby whale that's suffering on a beach somewhere, then people are more willing to give money. Or you show a starving child. Those sorts of images capture emotions. And things like description in your writing, the use of description can help do the same thing. Writers can also shape readers' feelings through word choice and sentence structure, especially when they're doing description, but also other times as well. With word choice, words have two layers of meaning, the denotation and the connotation. Denotation is what a word means in the dictionary. It's the literal meaning. Connotations are associations that readers make with the word that are either positive or negative, that have a little bit of emotional charge to them. For example, the word cause or the word effect is something that happens that's caused by something else. A benefit is an effect and a consequence is an effect. But benefit has positive associations and consequence has negative associations. Literally, they're both synonyms of effect, but they've also got these positive and negative feelings. What you can do is if you have a word and you want a word which is more positive or negative, which is going to have more of an emotional impact on your audience, you can use a thesaurus to help you look for words that mean the same thing. Sentence structure is also useful. If you want to create intense feelings that are very frenetic and have a lot of energy in them, a lot of tension, you can use short sentences. This is great for feelings like fear or paranoia or excitement. If you think of sportscasters often talk in very short sentences or sentence fragments. He's caught the ball. He's at the 10. It's a 5. Touchdown. Those sorts of things are very short, and the shortness of them helps grab our attention. It makes us breathless when we have to keep pausing to catch our breath between sentences. Whereas long sentences produce a calming effect. Which makes them ideal for emotions that are more reflective or that are more relaxed. Things like hope or concern are very good with long sentences. Of course, you can mix and match sentences also. So a long sentence followed by a very short sentence, the short sentence is going to have a bigger impact followed if it comes after a long sentence. Because you've done one thing, you do something else, it jolts the reader's attention. Some emotions to use and avoid. It can be useful to make the reader feel pity, make them feel sorry for someone. Hope, make them feel if they accept your claim, something good will happen. Fear, if they don't accept your claim, something bad will happen. Fear is one of the most commonly used, for example, in environmental arguments. We'll have terrible floods and heat waves if something's not done for the environment. That would be an example of fear in an argument. Compassion, making people want to help someone else. Excitement, pride. Some emotions that can be tricky. Anger. If you're writing towards an audience that disagrees with you, which when you're trying to persuade someone, you always are. If they already agree with you, they don't need to be persuaded. So if they disagree with you and you make them angry, they may realize that you're trying to play with their emotions and they can turn very angry at you. So that's typically one that you don't want to use. Depression, doing things like pity can kind of lead towards sadness, which is okay. But if it goes too far, the reader may become emotionally numb, which reduces the effectiveness of your rhetoric. Logos is the Greek root of the word logic, and it's more about an appeal to the mind. With logos, you want to think about reasoning and avoiding logical fallacies. Reasoning is the structure of an argument and the way it takes raw facts and evidence and transforms them into reasoning, into an argument. There are 4 different types of reasoning we're going to talk about. The first type of reasoning we're going to talk about is deductive reasoning. Then we'll talk about inductive, abductive, and finally reductive. Deductive reasoning is a type of reasoning that uses what are called solilogies. Solilogies are a series of premises. If the reader accepts the premises as being factual, then the premises will lead to a logical conclusion, which is true. Aristotle was all about deductive reasoning because he believed there was always something that was true. There's always truth. Deductive reasoning, which is often called pure logic, is the strongest form of reasoning. And in the next slide, I'll give you an example when I contrast it with inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is what we see more today. Inductive reasoning shows the likelihood that something is true by compiling examples, making analogies, which are comparisons to similar situations, and looking for observable patterns of behavior. By observable patterns, you wouldn't want just one example to base a conclusion off of. You would need multiple examples. If someone does something bad once, it's a mistake. But if they do it multiple times, it becomes a characteristic. With inductive reasoning, when you hear about court cases, a phrase you often hear is guilty beyond the shadow of a doubt. And that means that the prosecution is using inductive reasoning. If they could completely prove it 100%, they would have deductive reasoning. If this person admits they committed a crime, then they committed the crime. That would be deductive. This person admits they did it, and the person admitted that they did, those would be your solilogies, right? So you would be able to prove that. But if they don't, there's always that area of doubt. You might have, cause, you might have motive, you might have a weapon, but you may have one piece of evidence that might be missing, and that one piece may cause people to doubt. And that would be a case then when you would have inductive reasoning. So a famous court case is the O.J. Simpson case. In the O.J. Simpson case, the prosecution had months and months worth of evidence from testimony from people who knew him about his behavior, all sorts of different things. And what they didn't have is they didn't have fingerprints on the murder weapon. But they had a glove that had the blood on it of his ex-wife that they believed he wore while he committed the murder. And so when the defense got its chance to make its case, basically what they did is they said, the killer wore this glove. And then they had O.J. Simpson try the glove on, and the glove didn't fit him very well. And they said, well, the glove doesn't fit O.J. Simpson. If the killer wore the glove, but the glove doesn't fit O.J. Simpson, then O.J. Simpson cannot be the killer. That would be deductive reasoning. The killer wore the glove, O.J. can't wear the glove, therefore the killer can't be O.J. And in basically 5 minutes, they basically killed 8 or 9 months worth of evidence of inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is very strong, but it's also very hard to come by. And you're more likely to use inductive reasoning for most of your arguments. Next up is abductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning is about attempting to find the best possible solution. It does this by borrowing from both deductive and inductive reasoning. It borrows from deductive reasoning in order to show that other solutions aren't possible. This is often what you'll use when arguing against opposing views. One of the things you might look for with opposing views is for logical fallacies. If you can find a logical fallacy in an opposing view, you can use deductive reasoning to break it down and tear it apart. If you find alternative evidence which disproves it, for example, would be something you could use that would be more deductive. Whereas abductive reasoning is more about showing that something is likely to be true by using inductive reasoning. So you would argue inductive reasoning in the reasons to support your claim, or the reasons to support your thesis. But when you get to the opposing views, you'd use deductive reasoning. And that combination is called abductive. Reductive reasoning attempts to prove that something is a good idea by arguing that the opposite of it is a bad idea. We should go on vacation because staying home is boring. So it doesn't have to deal with vacation being fun or exciting. It's only that being home is boring. So rather than focusing on what you're arguing about, you focus on the opposite of it, on the opposing side only. That's a different type of reason, but it's one that might help inspire some ideas in your arguments. Logical fallacies are mistakes in reasoning. They lead to weak arguments. They're things that people often make arguments using these, but if someone catches them, then it's easy to tear down the argument. There's dozens of different known logical fallacies. We're going to kind of cover the most common. A hasty generalization is when a writer jumps to a conclusion based on a limited body of evidence. Here's one example of something. Now I'm going to say that that's always true. You can't just say that something is always true. It rained last Monday. That means every Monday it's going to rain. Not quite. That would be a hasty generalization based on one piece of evidence. A slippery slope is an argument based on causation that looks at effects of something that are grander and grander and grander until it fails to be within the realm of possibility or reason. So for instance, you shouldn't litter because the world will end. That would be an example of a slippery slope argument. Post hoc assumes that causation exists where it doesn't because of time order. Thing A happens, and then thing B happens right after it. And that means A causes B. Not necessarily. It could mean that A caused B, but B could have happened for reason A, or reason C, I mean. So unless you can explain causation or prove causation, you don't have causation just because of time order. Similarly, mistaking correlation for causation. Correlation is when you've got two trends going on at the same time, and assuming that one causes the other. They may have nothing to do with each other, and it only looks like they do because they're both happening at the same time. So you would need to be able to find evidence that one is affecting the other and be able to explain that in order to make an argument for causation. Genetic fallacy is assuming that an idea's worth is related to the person or people who originated the idea. So when someone is pushing an idea and you say, well, the first person who came up with that idea was a really bad person, that doesn't necessarily make the idea bad. Ad hominem is making personal attacks rather than attacking an idea. So they come up with an idea, their idea is really good, you don't have anything to say against it. So instead you attack them and take attention off of their idea. Ad hominem is very similar to the genetic fallacy. Circular reasoning is repeating the claim as a reason. It's good to recycle because recycling is very good. It basically just kind of rewords it, but it doesn't really give us a reason for it. It just basically restates the claim. Begging the question is assuming a premise is true, and therefore it doesn't need support. Just because you assume it's true doesn't necessarily mean that your reader will. This is what Toulmin's trying to get at with warrants. Is he's trying to make you think about things that you assume are true, and therefore get you to provide support by providing backing for them. If you think something's true, there's a good chance your reader thinks it isn't true.